Shay, I Hotep. This is The Truth May Hurt. The name is Raymond Witcher, and I will be your host. I've put together, it's not really a presentation, but I'm putting something together that I'm going to show you that I'm titling Who Was the Piso Family Part 2. And before I get into that, we're coming up on the 6th month of The Truth May Hurt. We have 102 subscribers, and I want to thank everyone for subscribing. We have around 3,500 views, which is good. I'm asking people that watch my videos, if you would, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and share. Help me grow this channel. 102 subscribers in 6 months. For me, it's pretty good. For me, it's very good. Especially considering the subject matter and topics that this channel is going over. Okay, it is very taboo. It goes against the indoctrination of the things that we have been taught and told. Okay, that we've believed all of our lives, and that for many, and even for me, when before I woke up, it seemed like an attack on Christianity. And I can understand that. So considering these things, to have 102 subscribers at this point, it shows growth. And those people that have been with me for a few months now and that have been here for 6 months, you should be coming out of that shock now of that leads you to rejection. Okay, so it's a process. Okay, my job isn't to convert anyone. My job isn't to make anybody see what I see and think what I think. I'm showing you the evidence that I have, that I accept as evidence, that may not be evidence to you today, because it's shocking. But if you stick with me a little bit and you do your own research on the things that I'm showing you, it may be your truth tomorrow or in the near future. So, excuse me, hang in there, strap up, and let's get to the truth. Okay, the things that I show you are not my opinion. I show you things that I'm also presenting the objective evidence, which is the sources of the information, so you can look it up yourself. Okay, so let's get into this. And what I want to show you first is this video that I'm making now is part 2 of this video. So if you haven't seen this video, who was the Piso family and who was Serapis, watch this first, please. Then come and watch this one. You can watch this one first, but these two tie together, okay? Because this one is a continuation from that one, okay? And it also tells you who Serapis was. I'm not going to get into Serapis because I don't want to make this too long. Okay, so we're going to get into this presentation, and what I want to show you, let me pause for a second so I can show you how I got here. Okay, I really can't pull up how to do this search, but what you can do is, I know what I did, all right? If you do a search on the Roman Piso family created Christianity, this is where this article comes from. Okay, and this article is more of a blog, okay? But, okay, so when we come down here, he's just qualifying now how they have come to be able to know just who the authors of the New Testament texts really were. So let's start here. All right, this is where they're talking about how they're going about to do their research. All right, the first person to compile the evidence which points to the Roman authorship of the New Testament text were Professor Bruno Boyer. He he was far ahead of his time. So it's qualifying the people that have done this research, right? So we're going to go down a little bit. We're going to get into what this study has shown. Okay. All right. Okay, so when we get down here, we're talking about, no, we just did that. Okay, well, no, we didn't. Okay. This tells about how the various Piso family members wrote the text of the New Testament. He gives the dates in which these texts were written and information about each of these family members. And since his work has been available to others, several others have written about this. At a point when there are approximately 450 million people in the United States alone, there are about 2 million people who have heard about the Roman Piso family and their authorship of the New Testament. Before long, though, many more will know about this and write about it. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to expose people to what the church is hidden, what most pastors don't even know about. Because, man, you're dealing with some of the most controlling people in the world. And they wrote this New Testament to control the world. Okay, so when you hear the United States saying we want to make Christianity the nation of America, it's dangerous. Okay, because they're trying to take back that control. All right, so when you get down, it says, he also tells us about Arius Piso and how he used many alias identities to create the illusion that several people were writing independently of each other about several things, when in fact he and his close relatives were doing all of the writings for public consumption. In other words, the Roman authors were writing in concert with each other for a specific cause because they had the same motives and in common. Some of the authors that he examines and discusses in his book are, and he goes down through the names of the people, right? Contrary to what most people even today think about ancient texts and authors, there were many of them, and a vast amount of their works do survive today and are available to most people if they know where to find them. Which brings me to the question which I had brought up at the beginning of this report. And those are, so now he's getting down into who are the Pisos, okay? Now he's getting down into who these family members are, right? Who were the Piso family members? That can be better answered by getting the research material, which he's already mentioned. That's the above information. But briefly, the Roman Piso family were Roman royals who had been in position of authority alongside other Roman aristocrats. And who at various times were moneyers, councils, governors. Their ancestry, just as the Julian Caesars, went back to ancient kings of Troy and even further. In fact, understanding their ancestry is key to understanding so much of this, as you will find out later as you do your own research on this subject. So he's just introducing you to things. That's the same thing I'm doing. I'm just introducing you to things to make you go, and just look it up. Okay? All right. See the inherited names and titles. Okay. Okay, Aris Piso was descended from the Herodian ruler of Judea through his mother's side, the family. The Herodians were the overseers of the Jewish sect, but particularly they were the authorities over the Sadducees. And the Sadducees were the enemies of the Pharisees in regards to their goals. The Sadducees represented the vast interests of the rich, while the Pharisees represented the interests of the average person. The Herodians were Roman installed rulers of Judea, replacing the Maccabees. Now, you remember this war that they were talking about, they were having for over 100 years? One of the books, or two of the books that they took out of the Bible are the Maccabees 1 and Maccabees 2. And the Maccabees, they were black men, but they were known for being able to go up against the Roman and the Greek and their enemies. So what this is actually telling, and I just realized this, is the oldest brother of the Maccabees, he was killed. He was the brother that was the commander or the general or the ruler in their military. So when he died, I can't remember if the war was against the Greek or the Romans. I think it was the war against the Greek. And the younger brother that didn't have as much experience as his older brother, he was having problems. So the Romans came in and said, listen, we'll help you. Side with us and we'll help you win this war, which they did. But then the Romans took over. So that's what this is talking about right here, right? Replacing the Maccabees. However, there was great support for the Pharisees, as so many more people were getting lost here. So many people were rich royals and had been living under harsh conditions for so long. The common people desired basic human rights and the end of the practice of slavery. And so this was what was the driving, well, this is what was driving them so passionately in their war against certain royals. What you are reading about here is actually the other side of the Jesus story. Okay, so it's telling you that they went through this war for 100 years, and the Maccabees were involved in it. They won the war, defeated the Maccabees, and now they're getting ready to put this in place. That's one of the reasons they had to remove so many books from the Bible. Okay, and it was a business. Now we're getting down to the business parts. The slaves themselves were uprising, and they were even starting to kill their own masters, sacrificing themselves in the process of this cause to end slavery. And this is what was so frightening to the royals of the Roman Empire. They were in danger of losing their own lives and own slaves. And slaves were not being obedient as they once were under the Jewish religion. Okay, they were breaking out of that. They were, starting to kill their masters. All right. Can you imagine what a problem this presented to royals who were used to living very comfortable life, and of being in complete control over the lives of all of their slaves? This is one of the main reasons for the creation of Christianity, of the Christian religion, because one of the main components of it was to pacify the slave and keep them obedient. This was accomplished by giving them advice such as to be content in their life situation and by telling them that they will receive their reward in heaven. I'm seeing this everywhere. I'm seeing it in the Reverend C.C. Jones letter. No, the Reverend C.C. Jones Instructions for Negroes in America. I'm seeing it in the Willie Lynch letter. What's the other one? It's everywhere. King Leopold's letter to the missionaries going into Africa. They're all teaching the same thing. You're going to get your reward in heaven. God made you to be a slave. God made white people to be your master. God allowed slavery so that white people could introduce us savages to Jesus Christ and civilize us. This is what this is saying. But these very same people who were now creating this new religion were the descendants of those who had been creating other religions. This is what I'm telling you, for thousands of years. Every 2,160 years, they have to create a new religion, because that's the cycle of the universe. Each zodiac lasts 2,160 years. If you multiply 2,160 years times 12, it comes up to 25,920 years. So every 25,920 years, our universe starts a new cycle. Everything has a cycle. Okay? Let me get back to where I was. Okay, so it's saying here, they knew. Okay, they have been creating religions for thousands of years. Excuse me. They knew the truth about religion because this had been their own family business since the very first creation of the idea of the first religion. They knew that God was only an idea, a concept which their ancestors had created and used in creating religion. They also knew that the other concepts involved were also created, not actually real. Okay? Well, let me back this up a little bit, because this is only telling the Greek and the Roman side of how religion was created. But the religion that they created came from the ancient African, Egyptian, Sumerian mythologies. It's the same story. It's the same story that the Egyptians were telling about Haru. It's the same story that all of these 16 different religions of having saviors that had an immaculate conception, was crucified, rose from the dead, coming back to judge the living and the dead. It's the same story. This is just going back to when the Romans created Christianity. But if you dig back further, it'll show you that all of this, and if you go look at the African hieroglyphics, if you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, you're going to read the story of Jesus Christ. I had two ministers that wanted to save me. Okay? And I said, listen, if you can go with me down through the Bible and you can look at my evidence, if you can save me, I'll be saved. Okay? So for the first 5 weeks, we were going at it every day, 12, 18 hours a day. Okay? First 5 weeks, we studied the Bible, and I showed her all of the discrepancies and contradictions in the Bible for 5 weeks. And on the 6th week, I said, listen, let me show you my evidence outside of the Bible. And I said, have you read the Dead Sea Scrolls? First of all, she had never heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I found to be strange. So I sent her, we were doing this online and on the phone, and I sent her a copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I told her, I said, I'm sure if you read in between pages 300 to 400 or 400 to 500, you'll start reading about Jesus Christ. I can't remember where it is. So she was reading from 300 to 400, and I was reading from 400 to 500. And I guess about 10, 15 minutes later, she said, wait a minute. I said, what's wrong? Miss Kathy, I'm not going to call her last name. She said, I'm reading about Jesus Christ in here. I said, excuse me, Miss Kathy, but you're not reading about Jesus Christ in the Dead Sea Scrolls, because the Dead Sea Scrolls is 5,000 years older than the Bible. She said, no, Mr. Raymond, you're misunderstanding me. It's not saying Jesus Christ's name, but it's the exact same story. I said, I rest my case. And it messed her up. I don't want to get off of this, but I'm telling you that when you show people, when you can get them to allow you to show you accurate history, it's going to mess them up. It's going to mess them up. But for those who want to be in religion, they just opened the New World Religion headquarters in Dubai in 2023. So now the New World Religion philosophy is they just opened the Abrahamic Family Faith House, which says that regardless of which religion you choose between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, because you're practicing the Abrahamic faiths and you believe that you are one of the descendants of Abraham, you're all going to heaven. This is a business, okay? So when they're coming down here, they're telling you that they also knew that the other concepts involved were also created and not real. So that cancels out all of them. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hindu, all of them. It cancels them out because they know they're not real. At least the ones that created them know that it's not real. But they've been able to keep that in a closed loop within their families. But now technology is caught up with them. You can read the history for yourself. So in the time of the Negro, the Piso family and other royal relatives were trying to overthrow him. And in response to this, he had several of them put to death. Now they're starting to kill people. He did this with Seneca, who was a relative. Now he's going down through his family members that he was killing. Okay? So they're going down through killing, and one of them, he says he was informed of a plot by the Piso family. Okay, they're talking about this man that they had plotted to kill, and he had been ordered him to commit suicide. Okay, because the Gaius Piso did this. Nero spared the lives of his family in exile areas, Piso, to military duty. Okay, so when you come down here, to better inform you of many of the fine details which you should know about, he's saying that he's currently writing other books and booklets about this, which he gives more detail about the Piso family members and what each of them were doing with regard to creating and helping create the Christian religion. So be looking out for his books, okay? And then he's giving you the list of the books here, the synthesis of Christianity, which he mentioned above. All right. Once people know all of these things and have a firm understanding and background in this area, it becomes very exciting, as it is really an unfolding drama, a real one, which serves to explain so many things which have remained unknown to so many for such a long time. So he's telling you all of these questions that you've had and I've had that we were told not to ask, and we didn't ask because we were told that, you can't understand God. Yes, you can. You can't understand your Creator until you get out of the belief system of the man-made God. He made it up. He's telling you that you made it up. Okay. All right. So the time for that is coming to pass. But as I know and I'm explaining to you, they already have a new world religion started. Matter of fact, you can pull it up. Look up the headquarters, the New World Religion headquarters in Dubai. They have a church here. They have a synagogue here. No, they have a temple here, a synagogue here, and a church here. All three locations are going to worship in the same place. I don't know how that's going to work because in Dubai, they'll cut your head off. Okay, so I'm betting on the Arabs. Just going down through her about Arius Piso, and he had his 3 marriages and his children. We come down here to paragraph 2, and it says, "Why would they want to create Christianity?" And he says, "Well, I think that we have already answered that, at least in part. However, to better understand this, we must see it from their perspective. They were highly educated royal Romans, and they understood this very important fact. And that is that even if they were able to take control of the Roman Empire, they would need a means in which to maintain and keep that power and authority. And this is where the creation of the new religion came in. I have made a list of some of the most important things that these royal Romans would need in order to achieve these goals. And these things are evident in the New Testament text. You can find that information in his book. Okay? Okay, you can read on down through here. This is telling him about his military service under Nero, and he was governor of Syria. And it goes down through here, and he was in charge of Judea. Right? That post gave him command of the legions, control of Judea, his own history, records, his service in Judea. So it's going down through these things, but when you get down to here, where is it? So when you get down to here, about the true authorship of the New Testament, in order to get away with all that he did, he had to make Arius Piso, in order to make all he did, use of family aliases names or pen names, okay? But his use of those names can be deduced and determined from a number of factors, particularly because he himself wanted people to know, people to one day find out just what he did and to know just how he did it. So thus, we have seen examples of why they would want to need to create Christianity. There was a war going on. A solution was needed for the problem which confronted the royals of that time, the revolt of both slaves and the common people, led by the Pharisees, had to be stopped, and they had to have a way in which to maintain the control of the masses once they gained control over Rome. So I'm showing you this is a business plan, okay? It's a business plan. Religion is nothing godly about it. It's nothing in the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah. It's God's holy word. They made it up. Okay. So when we get in here is what these people were doing while creating Christianity was also creating lasting monuments to themselves. So they were building monuments. So these are the clues that they left signs and things so that they could show what they did and how they did it. Okay. They were Instead of burn them in pyramids, instead built themselves monuments because they knew that the stone would last, right? And he says, what does this mean? Okay, let me stop for a minute. And they were doing this to understand, stone, right, would last, all right? What does this mean? It means that not only was all that was written in their time for public consumption was controlled by royals, but that this was true for most of history since that time. In other words, history, as we have been taught, didn't happen in the way in which we were told. And that is because there was no freedom of speech in history until fairly recently. It appears that this only really began with the establishment of the United States of America. Before that time, the world was virtually ruled by kings, other royals, and religious leaders, all of whom controlled the production of all books. So, the history back to the earliest times were kept in near pristine conditions with regard to their content. And the authors were actually royals, despite what the authors of those books may have claimed. Now, back up above, when we were reading, or when I read to you about how the members of the Piso family were writing all of these books together with each other, but we were told that the authors, Mark, Luke, Matthew, John, were independently written. Well, if they were independently written, why do all of them start off with the same wordage and verbiage? The book of Matthew says, written according to Matthew. John says, written according to John. Luke says, written according to Luke. Mark says, written according to Mark. What are they, telepathic? They can read each other's minds. These authors that had no last names. Now I tell you, if you do a search on who are the authors of the New Testament, just do a search on that. It'll tell you that the real authors are unknown. They use the names, and that's what when they say Arius used aliases, those are the aliases. Mark, Matthew, Luke, John, Peter, Daniel, Jeremiah. They're the aliases. The same person wrote all of them, or the same authors wrote all of them out of the Piso family. Okay? That's what it's telling you. Okay, so when we're getting down here, we're talking about how they kept this control for so long. Now we get into a whole another area of this, and that is how this was concealed from the public for so long. No one could write books, literature in general, for public consumption except for royals, under penalty of death. This is how the royals were able to maintain their control and put down most revolts. Like Trump now is trying to take over the media, no freedom of speech. No, he wants to control it. If he can control the narrative and put that system in place, after 1 or 2 generations, when we've died off, everybody will be under their control. It's about taking back that control. This is how the royals were able to maintain their control and put down most revolts. But over the course of time, little by little, change occurred. A part of that change took place with the invention of movable type and the printing press. It got out of control when, we were able to print. The church tried very hard to suppress the news of these inventions and keep them out of the hands of people, because they knew what this would mean, and that was that the average person would soon have the ability to start producing their own books and their material at a rate which could not be controlled or destroyed by royals and church authorities. In essence, they saw that this would mean that after thousands of years of controlling all that was written for public consumption, that was going to finally come to an end. Since scholars in general did not know this, they made incorrect assumptions about history. I have noted at least 6 major assumptions which scholars have made regarding history and have detailed those in my books. Okay. Okay, now when we get down into this, we're getting down into how the Jesus story, Jesus lie, Jesus mythology was created. Right. For instance, we know that Jesus was never a real person, but was instead a created composite character that was played in the Gospels by a person who had created him, and that was Piso. What is one way that we can tell that Piso was the creator? Well, for one thing, it is Piso's writing as Fabius Josephus, who is the very first person to make mention of Christ in his work. This was done for the purpose of historicizing Jesus. He makes certain that people will know that when he mentions Christ without calling him Jesus, the people would be able to know that it's he, that he is referring to Jesus as the Christ by making mention of his brother James. Also, as a scholar, we find that the New Testament text makes anti-Semitic remarks in several places, which seems strange when one considers the fact that Jesus was supposed to have been Jewish. But we learn more about all these so-called contradictions as we discover the truth about the creation of the Christian religion. Now, I'm going to show you one thing. Jesus, from the teaching of the Bible, Jesus makes several anti-Semitic and racial slurs in the Bible. You go to Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28. Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of the Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly." Jesus did not answer a word, so his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." The woman came and knelt before him. "Lord, help me," she said. He replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." Dogs is a racial slur, like for Canaanites, like nigger is a racial slur for black people in America. So when he says it's not nice to take the bread and toss it to the dogs, he's calling her a derogatory racial name. Okay, and then Jesus said to her, she said, "Yes, it is, Lord." She said, "Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." Her daughter was healed at that moment. This is a fairy tale book. I'm showing you that it was written on lies. Okay, so when it's saying here that Jesus was supposed to be Jewish, but there are racial anti-Semitic terms in his writings, because first Jesus didn't exist. Arius hated the Jews. Okay, and why did Arius Piso choose to call him Messiah Jesus? He did so because this was a way to ridicule the Jews, Pharisees, whom he was at war with. I'm telling you, he hated them. So he threw little clues in his writings that Jesus is racist. Jesus is anti-Semitic. Okay? That's how that got in the Bible. Because a son of Gamaliel was named Jesus. Joshua. Arius could do this because his ancestry would allow him to do so. He was descended from high priests who had this same name. He used a lot of his family members' names in his writings. And so he was entitled to use that name, just as he was able to use other names, titles, that he had inherited from his ancestors. As Jesus, he used his Prince of Peace title, which he had inherited from Sestrist. He used the Savior title for Jesus, which he inherited from his ancestor, who was the great ruler over the Syrians. All right? And so on with other names and titles. Okay? He's showing you how he put this together. He used his ancestors' names. He put clues in there, and he got people's heads messed. And we're going to go right down in here, and it's talking about how they're going to make it last. So in various ways in which we have now discovered, the authors of the New Testament left us the ability to find out just who they were. They were not stupid people. They were people of great intellect, and they knew that what they were doing would last for a very long time. And the reason that they knew this was because they had obtained the means in which it would. Their very own close relatives were in control of the Roman Empire and all that was written for public consumption. So they control, he who controls the printed page controls the thinking of the age. Okay, so they're controlling all of the media for public, writings for public consumption. And as they had learned from their very own ancestors, once such power has been gained, it would most likely last for as long as those who were ruling were careful enough to make it last. I am aware of the fact that this report does not come close to answering all of your questions, but in reality, you should not expect it to. This is a subject which is very complicated and which requires a great deal of knowledge and information to understand properly. It is even above the understanding of most of the current scholars, which is why they have not been able to write about it as I and a few others have. In fact, we have terms for scholars and their level of understanding ancient history. There are those who think that history happened just as they read about it on the superficial level without examining it as critically as we do. And they are called old classical scholarship. Right? There are those who are scholars. There are those who are scholars whose findings to some degree agree with ours, but who do not yet know or understand what we do. All right? So he's qualifying himself, and he's saying, you got to get deeper than what most people are willing to dig. All right? You don't just scratch the surface. All right? The new classical scholarship or findings will one day replace that of the old classic scholarship and make the old way and methods of teaching of history obsolete. Okay, we're coming into a new age now. We're in the age of Pisces, the age of the Bible and the age of Pisces rule. Now we're in the age of Aries and the age of information technology. Okay, so in this conclusion down here, he's just saying that, as stated above, those who have been studying history as scholars before now have been doing so under the incorrect assumptions that history had happened differently than it actually happened. In doing so, they have based their conclusions upon at least 6 major false assumptions. So he's going down through here telling you how we were led astray because the Romans controlled all of the printed document and literature. All right. And through that time period, the way that we went about qualifying something or studying something was wrong. Okay. But now we don't have to rely on that. I'm going to stroll down here because here are his sources. Okay. So when I'm reading something and they are providing me the sources, I don't have to depend on their word. I can qualify it myself, and that's what I'm asking you to do. I can do more research than this here. But the main thing is just don't let somebody tell you all you need to do is believe. Who told you that? Who told you that your creator doesn't want you to know? Who convinced us that we need to stop at just believing, because they know that if you stop at believing and finding the truth, this is what you're going to find. Okay? They know that. They don't even want you looking for it. They want you saying, I believe, and that's all I need to do. Well, you need to do more than that. And you don't need to be passing this on to your children and your descendants. Okay? So I had to redo this video. I tried to do it better than I did it the first time. I think it came out better. I'm going to ask everyone to do some research. Give me some feedback on this, okay? Don't just call me wrong, and don't just say he doesn't know what he's talking about. Show me. Anybody can say you're crazy or you don't know what you're talking about, but can you show me any evidence? Can you show me any objective evidence where I'm producing false information on this channel? You can't. If you can, show it and show everybody. Expose me. All right? Get your pastor or your bishop to come on and do a presentation with me. This is not in a hostile environment. We should all be seeking the same thing, the truth. And as you saw above, Christianity was created for what reason? To control their slaves. Right after this, King James and Pope Innocent II made African slaves for life after they set this up in 1619. It's no mystery that King James version of the Bible came out 1611. 8 years later, we were made slaves for life by King James and the Catholic Church. And they started the Royal African Company. Look it up. They call it Royal African Company by King James. He started it. And the purpose of it, and he made a law that only his ships could transport slaves from Africa in the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, so he set up a business through the church and established slavery to benefit him. That's how you got Jamestown, the James River. All of these are named after King James, the one that started slavery, slave trade. Okay, so just look these things up and say, man, all of these coincidences? No, they're not. Let's do this. I'm gonna make it easier. I pull up the Royal African Company, and you can go down through here. I'm just showing you, do a search for the Royal African Company, and it'll come up. Okay, and this article's down in here. I think it was, the Royal African Company started, King James Bible came out 1611. 1618, King James started the Royal African Company that was used to transport slaves. Okay. And King James and the Catholic Church went into the slave trade business. The first slave ship to sail into Africa was Jesus of Lubbock. So now remember, the letter J wasn't invented until 1524. So there was no biblical Jesus. You could not have a biblical Jesus before you could spell Jesus. There was no J to spell Jesus with until 1524. So in 1563, Jesus of Lubbock, that's when the Jesus of Lubbock went into the African slave trade. Okay? John Haskins, who organized 4 slave voyages to West Africa and the West Indies between 1562 and 1568. So this was even before 1619. The slave, one of the first names given under Jesus is Jesus of Lubbock. Started the transatlantic slave trade. Now, I haven't been able to prove this, but the name Jesus was an acronym for Joint European Slave Union Ship. It was a company. Joint European Slave Union Ship Company. Okay, so that's really where the name Jesus came from. This right here, the slave ship. Joint European Slave Union Ship Company. Okay, just introducing you to show you some things. You can do your own research, do your own follow-up. Have you ever heard about the Trans-Pacific slave trade? Okay, the Trans-Pacific slave trade was born out of European imperialism in Asia, from India to the Philippines and even Japan. Asian people who rebelled against Spanish control could be enslaved. The trade remained largely unknown, with Spaniards forcing captives onto rickery galleons for a 6-month odyssey from the Philippines to Mexico. See, the one thing when you look up the Trans-Pacific slave trade, they don't talk too much about it because most of those slaves died because it was a 6-month trip. And it was so horrific that a lot of the places that they were trying to capture and take these slaves to foreign lands, they passed laws saying you can't do it because women died. I mean, the slaves died. Women were being raped. So what they started doing was they started smuggling them on the ship. They wouldn't be listed on the ship's manifest. That's another good thing you can look up is slave ship manifest out of America. When you look up slave ship manifest out of America, you'll find slaves being transported from America to Europe. So why would they need to ship slaves? So in other words, to believe that we weren't already here in America first, you have to believe that they would put a slave on a ship on the west coast of Africa ship him all the way through South America, the Caribbean islands, the West Indies, then to America, then put him on another ship and ship him to Europe. No, we were already here, okay? I can't show you everything right here on this, but it's a couple of more things I want to show you. Oh, here it is. All right. So they had a slave ship named Jesus that transported slaves from the west coast of Africa through South America, the Caribbeans, West Indies, Barbados, and America. Then on the east coast of Africa and Kenya, they had Fort Jesus. Fort Jesus was used in the slave trade by the British during their rule. It was also captured by the Armenian Arabs, who used it as a stronghold to control the Indian Ocean trade. The fort is a World Heritage Site. Okay, so it's still there. Here it is. Okay, it's still there. All right, so you can never stop learning. Never believe that all I need to know is within the circumference of this circle, because it's not. And the things that they've given you in the circumference of this circle, most of it is not true. Most of it is not real. It's not historical. Okay? And when it comes to black people, it totally erased everything about us, everything that was done to us through colonialism and slavery. It's not there. And if you're paying attention, they're trying to take out the little bit that we have out of the school books. So they would round up slaves on the east coast of Africa, imprison them in Fort Jesus. All of this is the joint European slave union ship. Okay, so they took the acronym and made it the Messiah, the Son of God. But think about it. They couldn't have done this until after 1524. You got to look at it on a time scale, on a time scale, on a timetable, because there was no J. So unless God has a son that he sent to earth 700 years ago, Jesus is a lie. Now people are going to want to hold on to Jesus. Well, go ahead and hold on to him. You know, you're not going to hell because they made it up. And if that is what your fear is, then you don't have to be afraid of that. The truth will set you free, not the lie. The truth. Now, if you want to hold on to it, no, I'm not taking anybody hostage. I'm not starting a cult. I'm trying to free you from a cult. Okay? So I'm giving you the information, I'm giving you the resources, I'm showing you the evidence. It's objective evidence. It can't be disputed. Okay? And I wish somebody would come on and say, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'll take that challenge and I'll bet money on it. No, you're not. You're going to prove yourself indoctrinated and under European control is what you're going to prove to yourself. I already know it because I was under it. You know, I'm not bashing anybody. My mission is not to convert anybody. My mission is to show you how to convert yourself. And saying that, I'm going to say Ashe. Have a great day.